Hello and welcome to the Business of What's Next. I'm your host, Matthew Shipp, and today I'm here with Sean Mabry with Youngry. This show explores how ambitious leaders cut through noise, decide what matters, and sets up their business for what's next. Sean, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Matt. Happy to be here.
Yeah, great. Yeah, we've had some fun talks already, and I think there's a lot of fun stuff to talk about. But first, let us know a little bit about yourself and where you are up to now with Youngry and where you plan on going.
Yeah, so I am a ghostwriter and book strategist, which means I can both help you write the book. I can write the book for you.
Okay.
That's the ghostwriter piece. I can also help guide you as you write the book yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, the ghostwriting goes way beyond simply typing up words, right? I mean, at this point, AI can do that. And I do use AI to a certain degree in my process, but the kind of secret sauce of what I do is really story structure. I pull out the story of how you got to where you are now and where you're going next and put it together in a really clear, compelling way that shows people your unique genius.
Okay.
I call it the genius beacon. Like your book is, it's not just a summary of the things you've done. It's this beacon that attracts the exact people who should be working with you.
Interesting.
And my connection to Youngry is that Youngry is an agency based out of New Jersey that does primarily podcasting. They're partnered with a podcast studio where they can actually like fly you out and create the whole podcast with you there. They do PR, they do video. They literally last year they crafted an entire reality show around one of their clients. So they do pretty awesome stuff and a pretty wide range of things.
Yeah.
And my connection with them actually started with me pitching the founder Encore on ghostwriting services, and that conversation turned into, well, why don't we just build the publishing arm of the business around you? And I was like, all right, that sounds good.
So that's awesome. So who usually comes to you? What kind of person do you typically serve when it comes to either ghostwriting or helping somebody write get the strategy correct for writing their book?
Yeah, so typically my clients are mid-career founders who are looking to do one of two things. Either they want to move into that more thought leader, authority figure space where they're doing keynotes, doing their own podcast tours on premium podcasts. They specifically want to take their expertise and package it in some sort of coaching or consulting arm of the business. Great example of that, I have a client who has had a lot of success in real estate, but wants to move into really more spirituality and mindset coaching, which obviously his journey through real estate is part of how you learn those things. And so that's part of the book too. But he's not really trying to be a real estate coach. He's like, I'm going to teach you how to be the guy that can do things like this.
Okay.
And so the book is kind of bridging those two worlds. Like, hey, because most people who know him to this point know him for the real estate stuff. He's got this whole other side to him that we're putting on the page now.
Interesting. I was listening to a guy who was talking about the power of certain long form contents, and his number one is publishing a book. Why do you agree with that? Or I mean, usually there's like people. Yes. Okay. Let us know why you would say.
Maybe I'm a little biased as a ghostwriter, but genuinely, I do agree, and I think part of it is simply a book is one of the longest pieces of content you can put out, right? Like even compared to something like a screenplay, if you were to do like a sort of business documentary, which is another thing that Youngry can do, but that pales in comparison in terms of raw word count to a book. So there is so much you can get across in a book that by sheer volume, you can stuff so much of your message in there and still have it be cohesive and easy to follow. In the same way that most people are not going to go back and read thousands and thousands of blog posts or even listen to thousands of episodes of a podcast. I mean, I can probably list on one hand the number of podcasts I've gone back and binged from the beginning. There are a few, but not many. Whereas a book, it's like, okay, I've decided I want to go through this whole thing, right? I want to consume this whole package. Is usually the mindset people bring to a book. And yes, people do read books.
Audiobook.
And finish them.
I finish them.
Yeah, and audiobooks count.
Yeah.
Another thing that Youngry can do. Go a layer deeper on that. The structure of a book, and there are many different structures a book can have. That's actually one of the things I walk people through is how to decide the right structure. But that forces a different level of depth and clarity around your ideas. When you actually sit and try to package things in that way, you're going to discover, frankly, a lot of blind spots that you get to fill in.
Okay.
And you have to support things in a different way than, say, putting out a LinkedIn post or a podcast episode, right? Not that those are also valuable tools, but you don't have to stress test your ideas in the same way that you need to do to write a book.
So you talked about the type of person that usually comes to you to write that book. Where do they find themselves, kind of right at that cusp of deciding they need to write that? Kind of what's that next step they feel they need to take before they come to you? Because they may have some of the pieces, but they may not have all the pieces.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it just starts with people telling them, like, hey, like, when are you going to write a book? Or when's
Okay.
your book coming, right?
Yeah.
And beyond that, typically by the time people come to us, I do try to catch them earlier than this. I have some tools for that we can talk about later, but a lot of times they've already tried writing the book on their own, and they maybe even have hired other ghostwriters
Oh, okay.
that didn't get them across the finish line. And this is part of why one of my points of obsession is what I call book clarity. Like, if you're not crystal clear on who the book is for, why they need it, and what structure is going to make the most sense for them, that's really where writer's block comes from. I mean, people talk about writer's block as it's this kind of like weird mystical force that gets in the way of writing. It's like, well, no, it's not. It's your subconscious telling you that you don't know what you're doing, right? But that's a solvable problem, right? Anything that would cause writer's block is really a question that I know how to ask ahead of time, and I'm going to ask you so that we can get to that point of, okay, this is exactly what we need to be writing. And then we do it.
Question from kind of my side of the aisle. How important is visually mapping out your book?
Huge, extremely important.
Okay.
In fact, when in doubt, I will literally break out. I mean, usually virtual ones at this point because I'm talking to people on Zoom.
Yeah.
But I'll break out Post-it notes and I just say, like, okay, which by the way is the same thing that Hollywood screenwriters do, although they use note cards.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
But that's a classic thing where you see that they've got the pin board and they've got like the color-coded cards. And the reason why they do that is a lot of times you will end up moving the cards around.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. That's why I see ideas develop. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a little bit different in fiction because you can actually like rearrange the events a lot more. I mean, with nonfiction, and still with nonfiction, one of the things I have the most fun with is figuring out what chapter one is, because it's it's very rarely the first point chronologically, right? For example, I have to be kind of careful on the details here, but I'm working with a client right now who left a major sports organization with time still on their contract, right? So it's a pretty big, kind of shocking move. And so chapter one opens with that moment. Like, what was the immediate trigger for that decision? What was it like making that decision and walking, going through it? Then we jump back to their childhood and start backfilling everything that led to that moment. I have other clients where we do start at the very beginning, but the reason why is that, like, actually that guy I was talking about in the real estate space, for him, we actually did decide to go back and start. We had a chapter one in place and then decided to go back even earlier because what I realized was we needed to show who he was before his big transformation that he went through early in life. Like, we basically we need to see the knucklehead version of him before he got his act together, which is a big part of writing a book too. And I think this is one of the going back a few questions because it's such an important point. One of the things you can do in a book that can be done in other long form media, but I think it's still best done in a book, is showing the complete transformation that you went through and showing how because whatever promise you're giving the reader, one of the hardest things as an expert is to actually put yourself back in the place of what you were like before you had that transformation. Not just like the external stuff of like, how much money you were making or whatever, but the internal emotional state of like, this is how I saw the world, this is how I felt about myself. And so being able to capture that and put that on the page and then show that person transform into the person we are now step by step is it's night and day compared to anything else, because that's in my mind, that's actually what allows the book to have a transformational effect on the reader, is that they're seeing the progression from each stage of
Mhm.
that identity. And that's a huge part of what we're doing is making sure that the structure of the book parallels that and brings out in the way that's easiest to access.
Well, yeah, I imagine that story structure and of course transformation being that piece. I mean, even in marketing, I think that transformation is like how am I going to take you as a client and transform your current situation into a better one? I imagine the book does very similar, the same thing when they're trying to put things forward. So, question is what are some of the outcomes your clients have seen after publishing their book?
I mean, a huge one is just like the immediate boost of confidence saying like I actually finished the thing.
Okay,
Because
that's an accomplishment, definitely an accomplishment.
because like I said, a lot of times they have gone for years. I mean, I've talked literally years. I mean, I think my record is I talked to someone who was working on it for 7 years on and
Wow.
off. And they didn't even have like a full draft. Like they had like basically like a bunch of notes and
Hmm.
odds and ends here and there. And so simply getting the thing done is already a huge accomplishment, especially because it's no longer that thing that's haunting you of like I should be working on the book, right? And like it
Hmm.
just keeps falling down the priority list and you feel guiltier and guiltier about it, right? That goes away because now
Hmm.
it's done. Outside of that, it's still kind of early in the process. I actually made the switch to ghostwriting somewhat recently, but one of the things that attracted me to it is that there are not many other things than a book that in one fell swoop, and I'm chunking that down a little bit because obviously there's a fair amount that goes into writing a book, but once that thing is done and published, you I mean you can completely switch career tracks,
Hmm.
you can open up a new line of business, right? Any one of those things would take like an entire, I mean, multiple social media campaigns, for instance,
Hmm.
to get across. In a book, you can just do it in one fell swoop.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. No, that's so. You were talking about being a ghostwriter, and I'm assuming that as a ghostwriter or even helping somebody strategize a book, is you're from your point of view, you're taking a very non-biased action. You're trying to make sure all the pieces fit to sell it to tell a good transformative story.
Hmm.
And as soon as you said that, I was like, oh, I wonder if that's kind of like being the facilitator. You are the facilitator of this creating of this book, and much like where I come when I work with teams in their communication and deciding on what's next best for their business. I'm yeah, I stand out. I am just the guide. So I always like to joke that I'm the Gandalf to their Frodos. So
Yeah.
exactly that's it. I'm not going to steer you, but I'm going to guide you towards asking the right questions of yourself, towards reminding you this is what you put forward for yourself. I'm sure there's a lot of do you find at times there's a lot of times where people are like, yeah, well, we could go this direction and we could go this direction. And you're like, wait a minute. Didn't you say you wanted this book to be this? If you and it's okay to change your mind, but I want to keep this in mind as well.
I kind of have the opposite
Ah.
happen more often than not, where someone will actually, perfect example of this is I had a client come to me with their initial notes on the book,
Hmm.
and it was very like high level abstract lessons that clearly they were very passionate about and really wanted to teach. But for each one of those things, I'm looking at this and I'm like, well, most of these I could find in any other book, right? Or at
Hmm.
least I could think of other books that touch on similar things. And there are a few things like, okay, that is kind of a unique take, but even still,
Hmm.
I don't know why I should believe you, right? Like it's like the it's funny. I like to describe it as like people come to me wanting to be the wise man on the mountaintop,
Okay.
where it's like they're just kind of dispensing wisdom and people
Hmm.
like like let it rain over them. But what they really need to do is be the guide that walks people up to the mountaintop,
Mm.
which goes back to what I was saying about the different stages of
Okay.
identity. And so what I tease out, and in fact, I had another client where when we were doing our live interview, by the end of it, he just kind of threw up his hands. He's like, "Man, I don't even know if any of this is relevant. I'm just telling stories." And I got a huge smile on my face because I was like, "Now we're getting to the real work."
Uh,
Like the fact that you're not even sure that this is all relevant. Because the funny thing is, I already knew it was all relevant. everything in that interview, aside from a few things that were like kind of sensitive information we had to cut out later, pretty much everything in the interview, even those random tangents, still fit into the book, and they lined up exactly where they needed to, which I knew they would, even in the moment, because I knew that we had already found the heart of the book. And so everything around that, it's now we're just adding, muscle tissue and a spleen and a pancreas, right? Like, and so in my mind, it's like, well, the more the merrier. Like, if you give me more gold, I'm just going to write you a longer book, right? And ultimately, I would rather put as much as we can in there than arbitrarily cut it off just to for what?
Yeah.
Which I think is another thing that is kind of a mindset shift when you go into writing a book from social media content or most other marketing channels, is that most other channels really train you on hyper brevity, right?
Yeah.
Like, we got to fit this into a tweet. We got to fit this into a single LinkedIn post, right? We got to fit this into a carousel on on Instagram or whatever. And that's also a valuable muscle to have. The problem is that when you bring that same line of thinking to a book, you're going to end up cutting out the gold that book readers actually want. Book readers want the extra tangents. They want, more than anything, they want the lived experience, right?
Yeah.
Like, they want you to not just like summarize what happened, like, take me into the scene, paint the picture for me, let me feel the feelings you're feeling in the moment. And so and it's so funny, I was just describing this to someone the other day. The way my interviews typically go is I have my list of questions, and I always put the very most important question first. It's like, if this is the only answer I get today, then the interview is still a success. And invariably, I have to take like 2 or 3 stabs at that question, because they'll kind of like dance around the edges of it or give me like a surface answer at first. And I'm like, okay, let me ask it this way, right?
Yeah, excellent.
But then once I crack that first question, I will literally, I mean, I've had interviews that were like 3 hours long where I asked like maybe 5 questions total, because once they start going, they just go.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, like, give it to me, right?
That's cool.
And part of it too is that, again, part of where my work comes in is a lot of times when people are having a conversation like this, they're like I've done 5 times already, they loop back to previous topics, right? Which is fine for a spoken conversation. In a book, you need to like collate things and put them in their appropriate chapters. So that's a huge part of what I do.
Okay, that's huge. Yeah, you're right. Putting that in order, building that strategy. That reminds me, when I tend to work with a business or a team, the owner, and then in your case, the person who wants the book, I always have people come to me like, oh, this is my problem. This is the solution I'm looking for. This is what it has to be. And then by the time we're done with it, they're like, well, this wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be, but it's better. Have you did that experience where they come in with a set expectation and it kind of evolves over time as you're working through it?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
I mean, I had a client where during our first conversation, he said he basically told me he had 3 different books in mind, and we went through each idea for each book, and he basically, the book he wanted to start with, I said, that's actually book number 2. Because that book, and this is a really common thing I see, is that he wanted to start with the book that's like really crunchy and tactical, right?
Okay.
Like, when you run into this problem, you do this, right? Here's the solution to that. And in his mind, the second book was going to be the one that's more of a business memoir, talking about how he got here. And I explained to him, you need to flip those, because the crunchy tactical book is only interesting to people that know your full story.
Okay. Makes sense.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, you need to be established as a character in their mind first, because then they will bother actually reading and trying to implement those tactics. If you just give people the tactics, and I think this is a huge problem with like entrepreneurial marketing books in general, is there's a glut of books on Amazon about how to market your business, how to get better at sales, right? Like all the different subcategories within that. And most of them have like, I mean, they're lucky if they have like 2 reviews, right? Like, nobody's actually, buying and reading these things unless someone built a really aggressive, like direct response, like book funnel around it. which, fair enough. Like there is a strategy there. But in my mind, I want to write the books that people write reviews for and recommend to their friends and even gift copies of the book to other people.
Mm.
That should be the goal. And yes, we can still market it aggressively on the back end, but ultimately, if the book is not able to spread itself, then it's not a very good book.
Yeah. No.
Like,
I was going to ask about that. I was going to ask, like, there's so much push of, like, publishing these short form PDF books and all of that. Where does, what's the reality of that? Is that something just like, not enough effort, or?
Context is everything, right? Because I don't want to, as much as my personal bias might steer me towards this, I don't want to go scorched earth on that, because reality is, in very specific contexts, those can be useful.
Okay.
Like as a mid-funnel, again, there is a pretty well-established model of you write a book, you drive traffic to it, you make your actual money on the back end, upselling people into your high-level services, and the book is really just there as bait, right? To be very blunt, and that can work, right? But ultimately, those books, nobody talks about those books outside of that funnel, right? Those don't become the books that people recommend to others. They don't like put a copy of it on their bookshelf in the background of their Zoom call, right? Like, and to me, that should be the goal, where it's people want to talk about the book and share it with others. And people, like, one of the things I always say is, you want a book that will open doors for you when you're not even in the room. Like somebody somewhere hands your book to someone that's on a keynote committee, and then boom, they're reaching out to you completely out of the blue saying, hey, we need you to come speak at this.
That'd be great. Yeah.
You got to write a very particular kind of book to make that happen. It can't just be like, here's my 10-step PDF on how to whatever, right? Because why would someone in charge of a keynote committee care about that? Right? Like,
it needs to be a little more, like you said, transformational. So yes, totally.
Right. And again, it's like, when you're speaking to, I think there's another piece of it too. When you're speaking to an audience of, beginners and intermediate stage people in your space, there is a temptation to, just give them the like 10-step PDF, right?
Yeah.
Because that is in some sense easier to consume. And I think it is at a certain stage of awareness, which again, there's a lot of nuance we're getting into here. It is more practical, right? Because they do need to go and take action. But here's the thing. If you want a broad audience that people, if you want an audience that people are going to want to borrow, which I think is really the key to anyone building a personal brand of any kind, is your book needs to appeal to what people in that stage actually want, which is the dream. They want the inspiration first, information second. And I actually have a great example of this. So, pardon me. One of my, way back at the beginning of my career, when I was a content writer and copywriter, I worked very closely with the CEO of the company, and he would tell the story about how this was before I got there. This was like even further back in the business. But there was a point where, like, by his own admission, the business was failing. Like, he had a terrible business partner that was creating all kinds of chaos and letting fires burn, and he was in this phase of just ignoring the problem. And so, literally, what he would do he would sit in his car in the parking lot outside the office and read books about Navy SEALs because he thought they were cool. Like, it wasn't even like a self-education thing. It was just like, I just want to read about cool stuff and kind of indulge this fantasy before I go confront the real problems of my business. But what that did was, over time, that actually did change his mindset and got him to the place where he could go and confront the guy and finally have the conversation he needed to have.
Oh, neat.
Which then led to this huge breakthrough in the business.
Feeling stuck as a leader or sense you're out of alignment even though you're pushing forward? You're not alone. Seek Coaching helps leaders cut through the noise and reconnect with their authentic voice. Founder Stephanie Seek uses her 5 V's methodology to help you clarify what matters, reframe limiting beliefs, and bring your inner and outer voice back into alignment. With Seek Coaching, you create the space for clarity, confidence, and a path that actually feels right. Visit seekcoaching.com to take your next intentional step toward balance and purpose. That's a
It
great
took
story.
off.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's neat. So you've obviously got to talk to a lot, interview a lot of business leaders almost very intimately about their story and help them develop it. So I'm curious, what trends do you see that leaders aren't prepared for but should be?
Oh, trends that they're not prepared for but should be. Uh,
You see any themes
I
on
th-
that?
yeah, I really think one of the biggest things is how we're definitely seeing more and more of it every day. But I think a lot of business owners are still underestimating how bad the backlash against AI is going to get.
Okay.
There is, and I think what's interesting to me is where you can really see it is, and when I'm a huge video game player, I
All right.
always have been, and there's this really interesting thing happening right now where there were a bunch of games that were like critical and commercial darlings
Mhm.
last year, over the last 2 or 3 years, and right now just over the past few months, there's been all these news stories breaking of how they used a tiny bit of AI in their development process.
Mhm.
And the response has been terrible. Like
Mm.
people are, and they have had like industry rewards evoked
Oh, wow.
for some of these. Yeah. Because of the AI, like because the player base, the fan base is so angry that they even touched AI, that basically now the award bodies are like, well, sorry, we
Man.
gotta, if we're gonna maintain credibility, we can't let you
Yeah.
keep this award.
Wow.
And so I obviously that's gonna break differently across different industries,
Yeah.
but I think that is I do think that maybe that space is like a bellwether for where a lot of industries are gonna end up,
Mhm.
where AI becomes this thing where you got to be so careful about how you deploy it and how you talk about it, because it's beyond just, it's not even just that that there can be flaws in the product that AI creates, and
Mhm.
it's in my mind that's kind of a given. Like what, and it baffles me that people allow that stuff to slip through in the first place. It's like, do you just not have any QA? Like, what is wrong?
They're using QA
Um,
for they're using your AI for QA. Oh.
that's true. That is really what's
Yeah.
happening. Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. Um, but even beyond that, it's like if if it feels dishonest, which I think is the crux of a lot of the backlash, is that a lot of consumer sentiment is that if you had to use AI in any capacity,
Mhm.
then you're either taking jobs from humans or you're trying to deceive me somehow. Like
Mhm.
you're using this to fake something that you couldn't create legitimately.
Mhm.
And whether we agree with that perspective as business owners, which for the record, I don't actually.
Mhm.
Like I actually, like I said, I do use AI for certain things. But I'm very aware of like what's in the tea leaves, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that actually feeds, again, this feeds into like why I gravitated towards ghostwriting, and it's really like why I think books are more important now than ever, is people are more and more looking for something that took effort.
Mhm.
And books take effort.
Yes.
Even, no matter what you do, right? To write a book that's actually good, it takes effort. And so if it's easy to jump into Sora or whatever and like pump out
Mhm.
AI videos that are like, or like make an AI clone of
Yeah, yeah.
yourself, then people know that that's cheap.
Mhm.
And if people know that something is cheap, they don't value it as much.
Yeah. You kinda can't override it. Just move on to the next thing. Yeah. Alright. So, what is out of that, your game obviously, you think a gamer experience, and showing you how this relates. What is next? And I know we've talked a little about this, but what's next for yourself and things you're looking at for maybe your own business? I don't know if it's gonna be part of Younger or not, but what's next for you?
There's a few things that are in very early stages, so I can't quite talk about yet.
Okay.
But one of the things that I know you're alluding to right now is we had talked a little bit offline about wanting to set up workshops that facilitate better team communication through role playing games.
Okay.
And this is something like part of what I love about video games is I think a game at its core is a set of rules, right? It's a set of rules designed to create a certain experience.
Mm-hmm.
And within that, even in some ways, even more so than traditional storytelling, which is like, one teller, one listener, putting someone in an interactive system has so much potential to make them confront themselves
Mm.
and see things about how they think,
Mm-hmm.
how they interact with other people,
Mm-hmm.
especially if it's a team game,
Mm-hmm.
right? That short of just raw, like, real life experience,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know a better way to tease those things out. And part of it too is that in the context of a game, because games are for fun, right? That's why we play games. They're
Mm-hmm.
fun.
Mm-hmm.
And that
Escapism.
disarms, yeah, which I have a whole thing about escapism, because I don't really, I mean, there is such thing as pure escapism,
Mm-hmm.
right? And in my mind, pure escapism is it's brain rot, right? It's
Yeah.
like you're just consuming this content mindlessly. You're not even thinking critically about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're just literally trying to zone out and not be here for a
Mm-hmm.
minute. But in my mind, this applies to books, movies,
Mm-hmm.
TV, games, everything.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference between that and what I call transport. Transport is when I'm going into this other world, the world of the story, movie, book, game, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
so that I can experience something new
Mm-hmm.
and come back to this reality better and wiser. Because I got to deal with that thing that, I mean, case in point, like any good story, this is one of the great ironies of storytelling, is that a great story will put the main character through things you would never ever want to experience in real life.
Yes.
And yet, we pay money to go and watch a fictional version of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or even to watch a non-fictional version of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like someone else who went through that experience. Because that is how we explore the outer edges of our own emotional capability.
Yeah.
Like we're constantly trying to imagine, like, what would I do in that scenario, or how would I tackle that challenge in my own life? And so with games, same rule applies, but it goes even deeper, because now it's not just you imagining what would you,
Mm-hmm.
it's you actually doing something in
Okay.
fictional context, but still, right? Like you're doing it, you're gonna get that immediate feedback of like, ooh, that maybe wasn't as smart.
So
I should reflect on that.
what do you see, like, how do you see an outcome, or what kind of outcomes would you be after for a team that's using a role-playing game as a communication device for building communication?
One of the things I really, really want to explore, and I have like a little bit of a prototype in mind for this, but I I want to build a game around having, basically everyone has like the one team objective.
Mm-hmm.
And there are other games that do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is not like, I'm not the first person to think of this by any means. But you've got the main team objective, then each individual player has their own like little side objective
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of at odds with the main objective.
Okay.
Because learning how to navigate situations like that,
Mm-hmm.
I think, is like one of the core things that every team struggles with
Mm-hmm.
on some level,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because there are so many ways that just in any business, right? Like obviously the main objective is to like help the business grow,
Mm-hmm.
but everyone has, like, it's human nature, right? We're all selfish on some level. We have our own little objectives of like, oh, I want to get that position, or I'm trying to maximize my time off, or I just want, more
Mm-hmm.
pay or whatever. And so learning how to fit all those little side goals into the main goal is such a crucial thing for team cohesion. And it's something that, excuse me, I think is so hard to talk about in the context of the actual business,
Mm-hmm.
because then it's like, I mean, pay, for instance, right? Like now, like, okay, now are we having the raise conversation, or are we just talking?
No. Okay.
Like, you know what I mean? Like that, there's so many things where even broaching the topic
Mm-hmm.
is risky,
Mm-hmm.
because now it's like, oops, now we're having the conversation, right? Whether, we can talk about the conversation until we're having it.
Yeah.
A game is a chance to create a fictional construct
Mm-hmm.
that mimics those sort of conversations, but it's none of those stakes carry over,
Yeah.
because we're just looking at these ideas from a distance.
The reason I like this is right now when I run workshops, they're run and I do a lot of stickies. So things are semi-anonymous, and that's how I get through. So there's nobody recognizing who's who. I don't give them enough time. I time box things so you can't sit here and decipher somebody's handwriting. Or if we're doing digital, it doesn't matter. And that's right now how you get to what's the most important problem and the best solution. So it kind of helps eliminate that bias. What I like about this is it's not semi-anonymous. It's very, oh, what's the term for not semi-anonymous? Very front. You're very front and center.
Yeah.
But you are a part of a story, and you're also involved in creating. That's what I think about RPGs is there's a short story arc, but then the rest of the story blooms as the players play in it, and then the story develops. So you're a story. You're part of a storyteller in this, and then you can, with your own creative imagination, bring up the challenge or bring up the solution as a player in it. And I think it's still, and I'm totally guessing here, and I'm hoping that it would be true, that it would be the same as having a semi-anonymous situation, but you feel the psychological security to be right in front and center and saying what you really feel, but in a context to which nobody's going to, cast judgment. Or if they're casting judgment, they're playing a character.
Right. That's the thing, is that I think actually when it comes to playing a character, it's a kind of different route to the same destination, because you're not anonymous in the sense that like you have a face, right? Like as this character. It's just that it's not your face. And like there's actually, so another really important idea for all of this is the idea of the magic circle. So in basically any form of entertainment, especially in games, the magic circle is this idea that when we start playing this story, right? Theater is actually another really clear example of this, because it's all live with people. There's this sort of protective bubble that forms where it's just everyone kind of intuitively understands this is true across like all of human culture, right? Like we all do this. But once you enter that performance space, there's the outside world and there's this world, and never the twain shall meet, right? Like you can reflect on what happened inside the magic circle later once you've gone back out of it. But while you're in there, you don't bring real life stuff in here. And so if I'm going to step in and play a character who's a villain, it's understood that like when the villain does something, cruel or manipulative, that's not me, Sean, being a bad guy. I'm playing a bad guy, right? And that's really, I think, especially for, again, this is like one of the beautiful parts of games and storytelling, is that we all have parts of ourselves that we don't like to confront, right? For instance, someone who's a bit of a wallflower, that they don't want to tap into that part of themselves that could be bold and assertive. But if you give them a character that is bold and assertive, you would be amazed how often those people almost instantly will like jump in and start, and you'd be shocked by how much they have in them that can do that.
That's why I use my semi-anonymous right now, is because that 9 times out of 10, some of the best ideas come out of the people who never get a chance to speak.
Right. And conversely, like this is another idea I had, is like to design the game in such a way that they're sort of established archetypes or roles, and then as much as possible cast people against type. So if, for instance, like when I think of like a classic like D&D setting versus a typical business setting, if you're in sales, you're the fighter or even the barbarian, right? Like
okay.
You're a front line, like
marketing and
you're
sales.
loud, you're brash, right? And your job is to like rush out and hit things and be the center of the battlefield, right? Well, what happens when you take someone from the sales team and they are now like the healer, right? Or the like ranged spellcaster, right? Where it's like, oh, how, like, you don't even have the option of being the center of attention now. Like, if you do that, the
how
team's
would you
lose.
Do this if in this particular role?
Right.
Yeah.
So can you just support other players, or is that a problem for you? Right.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting thing to tease out.
No, that'd be a great, that honestly, in my opinion, that blows disc out of the water.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
I also liked it when I thought more about it from a game master perspective, the GM, the person
Mhm.
who's kind of helping the narration along. And I've always liked it because leans right into facilitation. That you in this particular situation, you get to be the business problem. You get to be the bottleneck they're trying to
Yes.
overcome.
Yes.
So you get to be the dragon, what in this case, the bottleneck or the business problem, and kind of
Yeah.
go and play that role. That would be really cool and really fun to think about. Because right now, the problem is me just making sure everybody's consistently remembering what we're working towards. So in this way, it's storytelling, and the big bad is still there. You're just playing it differently. I mean, yeah, this there's a lot of things to tease out here, but it's very exciting. And I mean, I really want to hear more about how the. I'll talk to you again about how this is teasing out when you get to tackle it, because I was just trying to think of like how there's a million questions, and we could go on all day about that. How's this going to look? How's
Yeah.
this going to work? But I think the idea is great because it's naturally already there. It's just getting it to fit a business challenge or a communication challenge. It needs probably just a little bit of working out and just trying it. Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that's half the battle. So real quick, we already talked about what was next for you. And so far it's been really cool how you've taken this whole storytelling and rolled it all the way to a RPG from ghostwriting and the people you work with, and the value of being able to structure this story correctly, and the fact that it needs and has to have that transformation to be truly successful. And we kind of back and forth between how the facilitation of this works and how it's similar to working with a team, but you're working with an individual, but you're really kind of gathering their experiences. Is there anything coming up, or how do people find you if they, thinking, hey, I need to start working on a book, or I need to find out if I need to start working on a book yet or not? It would be just as equally
Yeah.
important. Where would you send them? Where would they have to go to maybe find you or find out information about this?
Yeah. I mean, the easiest way to just start the conversation is just hit me up on LinkedIn or Facebook, and we can include both those links
Oh yeah,
under the show here.
absolutely.
But as far as getting a little bit more tactical, I have a tool called the Book Clarity Engine, which is a custom GPT that is designed to answer, should I write a book? And
Yeah.
what kind of book, right? So basically, once you pop into it, it'll guide you through this like very carefully structured set of prompts that tease out like what is the book you should be writing, and is now the right time? And if not, it'll tell you. Like it is actually possible to get a no.
Okay.
But part of what it does is it really stress tests like everything I was talking about before. Like who is this for?
hmm
What are like why are you the only person that can write this book?
hmm
Which is one of the most important things. And that goes all the way back to actually my background in fiction, because for about 3 years I worked with a guy named Art Volcom who wrote for 4 different generations of Star Trek. He was like a screenwriting coach through USC, really sharp guy.
Wow.
And excuse me, one of the core lessons he taught me was every time you sit down to write something, your job is to make sure you're writing the story that only you can tell. Because if someone else could tell it, then who cares?
Yeah.
Like,
True.
you're going to build yourself a career that way.
hmm
And I apply that same principle to all of my ghostwriting clients. Like, I'm not here to just give you, 30 to 60,000 words and call that a book. I have to, it's my obligation to get the thing that could only come out of you, because that's the thing that becomes your genius beacon and starts opening doors for you. So the book clarity engine is the most direct first step in that process. It's going to give you a snapshot of what that book is, and then it'll basically fire off the link to schedule a call with me, and then you can talk about next steps.
That's great.
But yeah,
And they can find that by getting a hold of you.
yeah. I'll include a direct link to it too.
Excellent. Yeah, I'll make sure that's on the show notes. So, anybody's listening, if you feel in your career that the next step for you is possibly capturing your story in a book to either pivot to an industry that you're interested in because all your experiences relate, or you just want to capture that and just create a nice, for lack of a better, tome of your life up until now in your career, definitely reach out to Sean. Again, I'll have all his information on the show notes, or go ahead and check out the GPT. Which one was the book? engine?
The book clarity
Book
engine.
clarity engine. Check out the book clarity engine. All right, Sean, it's been great having the show. This is great. We could go on and on, I think, for quite a while. And I really enjoyed this. And again, thanks for being on the This Is What's Next.
Awesome. Thank you.